It's Tuesday on the Lunduke Show, which can mean only one thing. We do news. We do all Linux news. And I have a special guest in studio, sort of, kind of, whatever that actually means for a person who does remote stuff. Barton George, the man with the plan behind the Sputnik project over at Dell. Say hello to everyone, Barton. Say hi.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Brian, for having me on your show. It is quite an honor and a privilege.
It sure is. What's your title? I always forget your title. Is it a really cool title?
Well, okay, I'll make it up right now. Well, anyway, I'm in the office of the CTO, so we'll say chief architect or architect.
Ooh, chief architect. Chief architect is way better.
Of the Sputnik program. We'll use that.
Yeah. Sounds... adding of the Sputnik program makes it sound more awesome and nerdy. I mean,
doesn't it?
It does.
Doesn't
it really helps. So Barton's got some news to talk about today, but also he has to comment on the rest of the news as well, because that's the price you have to pay to be on the Lunduke Show. I should also mention that this show is brought to you in part by Pogo Linux and the Atlas 1288R. It is a 1U form factor with dual AMD EPYC 7000 processors, up to 4 terabytes of RAM, which I should point out, Barton, how many terabytes of RAM do you have in your machine right there?
The one that I'm using now?
Yeah. How many terabytes?
Or the one Oh, I don't know. 100? 600?
100,000 terabytes, something like that. Well, this one has 4 terabytes, and that's pretty good.
That is pretty darn good, I'll have to admit.
Integrated KVM, quad gigabit Ethernet, 10 hot swappable drive bays. You can't go wrong with that. Plus, it's Pogo Linux, which means they'll put on pretty much just about any Linux distro you want on there. Not technically. I mean, there's a list. You can select from a list, is what I'm saying.
Mandriva.
And it's fantastic. I wonder if they have Mandriva. I know they've got Scientific Linux, they've got OpenSUSE, they've got Ubuntu, they've got Debian, they've got Red Hat. I mean, they've got the bases all covered. Go to pogolinux.com, pick one of the servers, check in the drop-down list. Which the drop-down list is great because it's got a big giant tux icon right next to it. That's how hardcore these guys are. pogolinux.com. Okay, Barton, before we do the news this week, we've got some pictures. We've got, there's not even one picture. I've got 2 pictures, and you can't even see them, but the people at home can see them. The first one is a screenshot of Photoshop Creative Suite 2018, the current version, the 64-bit version, running on Linux, specifically running on OpenSUSE with GNOME as the desktop environment via the current release of Wine, the current release candidate of Wine. Dang. I just think it's crazy. And supposedly, I have not tried this myself because I do not tend to run Photoshop much, but supposedly most of it all just works great. And it looks right. Like, even the theming looks pretty good. Like it's a nice dark theme that plays right into the standard GNOME theme. It actually looks right, and that's somewhat bothersome. I just think it's weird that that's working properly. I remember when we had to struggle to get any version of Photoshop working quite right under Wine, and now apparently you can get the latest version running great, which is, I don't know what I think about that. Do you use Wine? Do you use Wine, Barton?
I do not, but I do remember it from back in the day when I was at Sun. We would talk about using that to get Windows running on the Sun boxes. So that's sort of my early days experience with that, and frankly, that's kind of, I think, the last time I really looked at it. I'm sure. Yeah. So here, paint me a picture. Where have we developed in the last, I don't know how many years?
Here, we'll get to that in a second. Actually, the second picture I want to talk about is this month's Linux User and Developer magazine out of the UK. I don't know if you've seen this, Barton. The image of it is fantastic. It has right across the front, Microsoft, and with the little heart for the O. How I learned to stop worrying and love Linux. Is Microsoft a friend or foe? It's time for you to decide. And it's got 2 little laptops, one with a penguin on it and one with a little Windows on it, and the laptops are holding hands. They're reaching across and snuggling.
That's really nice.
But I don't know. It felt weird to me. I was looking at this, and I know Microsoft's put up the "We Heart Linux" thing all over the place. And actually, I've got some more stuff that they heart here in a little bit in the show. But I felt weird looking at Linux User and Developer magazine, where the largest text on the entire front of the cover is Microsoft with a heart in it. It's just, Like it feels wrong. Like there's this weird level where it doesn't
Maybe
feel
you're
right.
old and crusty. Maybe you're not with the hip kids. You're sort of living in the past, man. You got to get down to the jive with what the young folks are doing.
Wait a minute. So Barton George is telling me that I'm old and crusty and I got to get with the jive. I'm feeling it, man. You're probably right. You do speak to kids these days. I've noticed that you do that. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. It's weird. Do you run Windows much, Barton?
Well, I have to because of the corporate environment that which I am living within.
Oh, man, that's got to be hard.
Yeah. Well, no. I mean, you just do what you got to do, and you make your you got to run your PowerPoints. You got to do your you got
to make your PowerPoints,
emails, your whatever,
Outlookinating and your whatnot.
Yes, exactly.
I got you. I for me, it's a little bit hard. Like it's actually become like I have gotten so set in my ways, it's ridiculous. There was a point when I was just this very practical guy. I would look out and go, well, this company is standardized around Windows or Mac OS, and so I will go with the flow, and I will, have my Linux and my free BSD and whatnot boxes over here, but that'll be fine. I can utilize whatever they have.
Never the twain shall meet.
Yes, but now it's like a deal breaker. Like if a company's like, Brian, killer position for you. You got to run Windows. And I'd be like, that's great that you offered that to me. See you later. And then I can't, I've gotten so set in my ways that I just.
Is this that old curmudgeon thing again? Well,
kids are always walking across my lawn. I just mowed it, and they're always walking on
doesn't it, though?
So anyway, wine. Wine 3.0 has just come out with their release candidate number 6.
Candidate 6.
Yeah. And this is...
Oh my gosh, that's like...
Well, it's big. I mean, so I don't really use Wine, right? But this is like the first big numbered release we've had in a long time. It's 3.0. There's like not just the fact that they have a whole bunch of compatibility things where just tons of software runs now that didn't run before, and that's great. But also on top of that, there's like a psychological impact with having a big round number in a release. You know what I mean? It's like it's like when Linux version 3 or version 4 is released. Even if it's just technically a minor thing, and Linus says this isn't really a big deal, but it felt like a good time to make the transition to a bigger number. We still all are like, whoa, and then we put it on the front of all the websites and all the newspapers and magazines.
That's plain strategery in marketing, right? You want to give people, maybe it's not exactly the biggest newest thing, but you want to give the program an oomph, some lift behind it, and so you say, okay, let's round it up. 2.6 becomes 3, or whatever you want to do.
Go with the big round, and then when you feel like that's gotten boring, you change over to X or something like that. And it's exciting. Like that. We'll have Linux X at some point. I'm
Underbar 03A release candidate 12.
Yeah,
I think sometimes specificity makes you sound wicked smart.
Wicked smart. Hey, Barton, speaking of wicked smart. All right, so the reason you're on the show today to talk about the new XPSs. You guys have been doing under the Sputnik program, the Dell XPS developer editions, the shipping with Ubuntu for how many years now? When did you guys start this program?
Well, funny you should ask, Brian. 5 years. We just celebrated our 5th year anniversary end of November.
Nice. And now you've got new ones out. First of all, tell me about the new ones, and I've got a bunch of questions for you that you may or may not want to answer, but I've got to ask anyway. So tell me about the new XPSs.
Sure. So what we've got now is we've got the 7th generation of the XPS 13 Developer Edition, right? So that means in the last 5 years, we have launched 6 more before this, and this is the 7th. And so, I mean, if you were to ask me, I would.
Is that what 7th means?
Well, wait, hold on. Let me do the numbers again. Yes. And it's 1 before 9. Oh, no, wait. No. Hold on. Wait. 8. Sorry about that. Wow. I can't believe that's it.
That's it. We nailed it. So what you're saying is if there's math involved, always trust a Dell. That's the way to go.
Yes, exactly. spelling as well.
Sorry, go ahead.
So anyway, we're at the 7th generation, which I'll have to admit I never thought we'd get this far. We had
ironically,
really
so
strong,
according to this, the 7th generation of your laptop features an 8th generation of the Intel processor.
Yeah, no, they need to get in step with our numbering convention, because it really causes people confusion. Yes. So I'm going to talk to them about that, see if they can
I'm
sort
sure,
of hold
I'm
it
sure
for a little bit.
they will wait for a while so you guys can catch up.
I believe it. Yeah. No, that actually has been a bit of confusion, right? Because the 5th generation Sputnik would have the 6th generation Intel, so it's N+1 is the way that you can work it out. So anyway, we've got the XPS 13, and this one has a whole new chassis, right? Even svelter than the last one.
Svelter. How much does it weigh?
Roughly. Oh gosh, 2.1. I'm gonna guess, right?
You know what? You instantly said 2.1, and my brain's like, I don't know exactly what that.
Yeah,
would
exactly.
Feel like.
So, but you know what? Don't
enough.
hit me for certain on that.
Okay.
So it's got the big new chip. We go up to a terabyte. 16 gigs is the max, and we've had that for a while. When we first came out, I don't think it was 4. It was 8.
I thought
from
you
there,
could go to
it's
32 gigs now.
Not on the XPS 13, right? Our precision ones, you can go 32, and then if you get the bigger ones, the super big ones, you can go up to what's 32 plus 32?
64.
74. Oh, 64. Sorry. Yes. That's what I was thinking. Oh, man.
I don't know if you're getting the math wrong on purpose, but it's adorable, and I'm enjoying it very much.
Yes, I appreciate it. No,
I'm
64.
just going to say it straight up, man. I do not get out of bed for less than 32 gigs of RAM. I wake up in the morning. I'm like, is the machine I'm on having less than 32 gigs? I'm going back to bed. That's it.
Well, you know what? I'd recommend buying 2. I'd buy 2 16 gigs and duct tape them together.
Put them next to each
That's
other.
your solution. Yes. Thinking out of the box.
Yes. Nice job. What do they start at? What's the starting price point?
You know what? They're about 1,000. You know what? I'm going to double check so I'm not like a liar. But these are, so we, just to give you the lineup, we still are keeping the 6th generation around. So before one generation replaces the other, we're keeping the 6th alive, and then the other one, the 7th, which is the 9370, is actually going to come in above, right? So it's a premium one.
So like that way, the older last year's model kind of becomes like the slightly discounted version comparatively.
Well, no, it actually sort of stays at about, I mean, it'll be slightly discounted, but it stays kind of where it was. And because you get the quad core,
I see what you're saying.
Stays at a price. You get 2 price lines. So somebody says, well, quad core is great, but I don't need to spend that money for what I need. So it's just about 1,000. I'm looking at this now, which is what I was thinking. And you can go up to maybe 1,900 or above for it.
Nice. Okay, so clearly this is still working for you guys. Like, I mean, you haven't abandoned the put Linux on totally nice laptops project at Dell yet.
No,
so you guys are keeping going.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is. Yeah. Oh, you're gonna go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm just wondering, like, how has it been going overall? Like, are you guys growing? Are you guys treading water? Are you guys okay? You probably wouldn't say, yeah, we're treading water. That doesn't have a very good pizzazz ring to it. But you know what I'm saying? Like how is that going? Like, is your team growing? Like, what's happening over there in this?
Yeah, the biggest thing is that the amount that the revenue and the units have gone up basically. From last year to the year before, 100%, and the year before that. So it's going like that. I think one of the main reasons is that we don't have we don't put any marketing behind this, right? This is it, right? This is the marketing. Not to underplay what you do. In fact, last year we sold 40,000 units in a day after I appeared on your show.
You're welcome.
Yes, exactly. So it's more people telling more people, et cetera.
Yeah.
And so that's been great. And also earlier on, we had quite a bit of headwind. Folks within the company who weren't really seeing this as something that Dell should be diverting resources to, particularly given the scale that our other clients' systems sell at.
Right.
And so, but that resistance has gone down, 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 and so now we're humming along, and as I said, going up like that as far as revenue in units.
Okay. All right. All right. Well, that was about as much of an answer as I expect you to be able to give. That's fair enough. Okay. I know I got to ask these machines.
Yes.
All right, because you know me, I don't have my tinfoil hat on right now, but I mean it's right over here, and I grab it.
I believe it.
Need it.
I know you're going to don it later, but
IME. What's the status relating to IME in general, like on these sorts of machines? I gotta ask.
I'm sorry, I've got a call coming in. I've got to hold on just a second. No, that's not an area that I am. That is not an area that I am too up on, and as a result, I would just make up total stuff.
Okay, that's fair.
That doesn't mean that I couldn't. I'm sure there is somebody, and there's an approved line.
Here, let me make a note right here. Barton George is a pansy, won't answer IME questions. Right. Got it.
Doesn't understand anything. Let me find someone next time who understands something.
So, okay, that's pretty fair. That's pretty fair. It's one of those things that that comes up in this world, especially, like the rest of Dell's market. Some people are going to care about that. Most people probably won't. You know what I mean? It's just not the type of market people that are going to, maybe they should care, but they won't necessarily. But in the Linux world, man, like we care a ton. I mean, even some of the smaller manufacturers, when they start talking about like the Purism folks, right? They came along and they're like, we're going to make a deal about it. We're getting rid of IME, and that got a lot of news for them. And then one of the sponsors of this show, System 76, came along. We're like, getting rid of IME. Like we're going through the product line. Got a ton of press around that. Just saying, might be worth looking into that over at Dell. No, you can't. I know you may not know or whatnot. As people are watching this over at Dell, it might be worth checking that out for some good press. Just saying.
Somebody is checking it out. I promise you that.
I would be remiss if I did not take this opportunity.
Yes,
to
and I appreciate it. And that's why I like coming on your show, because you do your homework, even if I don't.
I don't know if I call this homework. I randomly spout opinions. Okay, very cool. And these are all shipping now. They're all available today.
Yeah, as of January 5th. And I think one of the things that's awesome that we've seen in the last couple of releases is it is synchronized with the Windows launch, and it's also synchronized both in US and Europe. So in previous launches, it's sort of been, hey, Windows comes out, and then a month later Linux does. And so it's great to see now that we're first-class citizens. We launch simultaneously, and then as well, as far as which has happened sometimes, you launch in the US and then there's a delay to Europe. And so it's great that last few ones we've been synchronized. And fun facts to know and tell, we sell probably 50% more units in Europe than we do in the States.
Really?
I kid you not.
Interesting. I wouldn't have expected that. Huh.
And that is, needless to say, that doesn't happen for the vast majority of what we sell at Dell, right? It's right. US would be the big market.
Right. You're an American company. So,
yes, exactly.
Huh. I would not have expected that.
You're speechless. You don't know what to say.
That's crazy, right? I'm like, Europeans, don't they just still use Amigas right now? I mean, like, come on, what are they doing over there?
I think Bull is really big over there, particularly in France. I think that's what they're all utilizing.
That's fair.
I'm getting back to the way back now. I mean, kids may not remember this, but
holy moly! Well, I don't really think most people in Europe don't actually have computers in their house. They have those little microtel terminals that they connect over the TV and all that sort of thing. Just probably. As far as I know.
No, exactly.
Moving on. I've actually got a couple more Dell questions, but it ties into some other stuff, so we'll get into that later. Windows related stuff is happening like crazy. Microsoft and Windows stuff. This patch came through this last January from Justin Terry, who works over at Microsoft, and it reads as follows. Hello, QEMU community, QEMU being the emulator. Over the past few months, the Hyper-V team at Microsoft has been working hard on a new user mode API for our Hypervisor that will be released as part of the upcoming SDK. This new API adds user mode capabilities to create and manage partitions at the Hypervisor level. Configure memory mappings for the partition and create and control execution of virtual processors. In other words, UI for starting and stopping and setting up emulators, virtual machines. With this new API, we are now able to bring our Hypervisor to the QEMU community. The following patches implement the Windows Hypervisor Platform Accelerator, WHPX, for QEMU on Windows 10 hosts. So QEMU, here's the crazy thing. QEMU, that's over on GNU. This came off of list.gnu.org. This is from this is from a GPL project hosted on GNU.org, and they're getting patches from Microsoft to add support for Windows hypervisors on Windows 10.
Cats sleeping with dogs, I tell you. It's just, you know, who knew?
It's, I don't, I'm fine with it. I love new features. But it's kind of like Windows being the largest font word and with a heart on it on the front of a Linux magazine. It's like, this is...
Well, we go back to that, Grandpa, and, you know,
it
get
feels
jiggy with
weird.
it.
I try to get jiggy with it. I really do. In fact, this continues. Here's another one from January 11th. I believe that was last Thursday. And I'm just going to read this to you. This is from Derek Stoley from the MSDN blog. Microsoft's performance contribution to Git in 2017. And it reads as follows. I'm just going to read the first part of it here. Visual Studio Team Services hosts the largest Git repository in the world, the Windows source code. Keeping a primary copy of the code available in the cloud... and having it be performant while being updated by over 4,000 users at the same time is a monumental achievement, but it is only useful if engineers can use the core Git client on their machine. We made this possible by building GVFS. Now, interesting to note there, GVFS is also the acronym for a GNOME project, which means Microsoft did not look up what other open source projects were doing before they named it. It continues, the Windows repository is larger than any other Git repository by orders of magnitude. And that exposed a few performance issues in the core Git that we needed to fix to make it work with the larger repositories at Microsoft. Thanks to Git being open source, we are improving Git for all users on all platforms by contributing these notifications back. And they end, it goes on further, but with a big graphic, Microsoft heart Git. They are hearting everything. Microsoft is going around and taking everything I know and use and love and stamping a giant heart on it and saying, we heart this.
Yeah.
They're just calling dibs basically on everything.
Yeah. No, exactly. It's a land grab. It's, you know, it's plant the flag. It's just sort of, you know.
No, come on, Barton.
Yeah.
I may want the kids off my lawn. I know you want the kids off your lawn at least a little bit too.
Sure do.
I mean, when you look at this, what's your first gut reaction when you start seeing one thing after another where Microsoft plants a heart on the open source and free software stuff? What does your gut tell you there?
Well, I think it's, you know, it's not your father's Microsoft, not to be trite or use an old expression, but I think there is some legitimate changing of the guard there, and I think there's quite a bit that that is not, what shall I say, insidious, or now there probably is some. I'm not going to, you know, kid you, but it's not. I don't think it's so much of a threat as it used to be, and it's a good thing. Yeah. So you know, half of insidious. But no, I mean, I think in general, I see this stuff, and it's interesting just to see, like in the developer advocate space, how many people they're bringing over from the open source world that you would not have thought would have ever gone and joined Microsoft, right? That would have been the absolute last place they would have gone.
Do you remember, and this was probably 5+ years ago, back when Microsoft really kicked off the Linux labs at Microsoft, how that was kind of a big deal back then, and they really pushing it, and it wasn't huge. It was a fairly small, business unit, but back then they were really viewed as like the redheaded stepchildren of Microsoft. Like it was, you know what I mean? And I, just to be clear, to redheads and stepchildren out there, that is a common parlance. I am sorry if that offended you. You are valuable as human beings. But they
sure. I don't think you believe that. I saw your fingers crossed. Wow.
Friggin' gingers, man. Darn it. I'm just gonna step in it nonstop. But it was just it seems like it's come so far since then, because I remember when we talked about this sort of thing happening, 5+ years ago, it was like this little ragtag group within Microsoft, and no one really believed, not really, that it was going to go in a continually growing open source embracing way. Certainly not where Microsoft puts a heart on Linux and open source and Git. I mean, next thing you know, Microsoft's going to heart herd, and they're going to come out and they're going to like Microsoft, hearts Firefox. Like they're just going to start stamping every open source project, and they're going to heart all of it. And I don't know if I like that or if I absolutely tremendously hate it with every fiber of my being. Like I can't quite figure it out yet. I mean, it remains to be seen.
It's we'll see how this movie ends, but I think they're making moves. I think they're making legit moves. And once again, there's insidiousness, I'm sure, somewhere buried in that. But at the same time, there's also legit. I mean, it's funny is, like you say, 5 years ago, we hear about the Linux labs. And every time in the past you hear about something any way related to Linux or open source, it's huge news. And, who would think Microsoft would do it? But they keep raising the ante, where each revelation with regards to open source and Linux seems bigger than the last one. And I got to believe that the company is pretty bifurcated, right? You've got the open source, the folks running Ubuntu on Azure and blah, blah, blah. And then you've got the traditional Windows Office folks. And I got to believe they operate completely different.
They're on Git now.
That's what I hear.
See, that's what this article's talking about. They're moving everything over, so their infrastructure is now open source. That makes me like I want to say it was 2 years ago. I made this prediction of what Microsoft is probably going to do, how they would basically step by step talk at increasingly levels about how much they love open source, and they would start open sourcing key things one at a time, and they've done it. And when I made that prediction, there was a little part of me of, I think they're going to do this, and I dread it. And now they're actually doing it, and I don't know how I feel. Anyway, my guess is there's a whole lot more news to come in 2018 about Microsoft hearting all sorts of things. They're gonna start hearting XPF or EXF and everything we like. It's gonna be awful or wonderful. I don't know.
You don't know, and that's the great thing about it is you just sort of sit back, you watch it happen, you see news zig, you see it zag, and it's but I think the trend is that way, right? It's going to go like this, but it's
for what it's worth, of different directions for what it is worth. I want to talk about Theo de Raadt momentarily. So I don't think we need to bring anyone up to speed on Meltdown Inspector. Everyone knows Meltdown Inspector, bad, super bad stuff. This article over at IT Wire has a ton
nobody
of quotes.
Nobody hearts those. Let me tell you that. There's no heart on that.
There's no heart on that. Oh, man. This IT Wire article is fantastic. So Theo de Raadt, the head of the here, I'll just read this here. Disclosure of the Meltdown Inspector vulnerabilities, which affect mainly Intel CPUs, was handled, and quote, in an incredibly bad way by both Intel and Google, the leader of the OpenBSD project, Theo de Raadt claims. And he goes on to say, only Tier 1 companies received advanced information, and that is not responsible disclosure, it is selective disclosure, Theo de Raadt told IT Wire in response to queries. Everyone below Tier 1 has just gotten screwed. I'm going to read a couple more quotes here because this is just... I love Theo because man is the man blunt. All right.
Unlike Linus, right, who sort of
Right?
couches his
He keeps his feelings all bottled up. There are
Exactly.
papers about the risky side effects of speculative loads. People knew, and as a result, no other vendor's chips do speculative loads. Meltdown is Intel only in a significant way. He goes on to say, Intel engineers attended the same conferences as other company engineers and read the same papers. I feel like he selectively is removing swear words from as he was typing this out. I feel like there's breaks for swear words. And read the same, I would say bleeping papers, but there's no actual censored word there, about performance enhancing strategies. So it is hard to believe they ignored the risky aspects. I bet they were instructed to ignore the risk. It is a scandal, and I want repaired processors for free. I don't care if they are 30% slower as long as they work to spec. Intel has been exceedingly clever to mix Meltdown, speculative loads, with a separate issue, Spectre. This is pulling the wool over the public's eyes. I am terrified of where this leads. Intel architecture is already very inconsistent, complex, and difficult to deal with. Suddenly, the trickiest parts of a kernel need to do backflips to cope with problems deep in the microarchitecture. This tricky component of kernel software is now becoming more complicated than it was in the past. We are used to hardware hiding the complexity and providing a uniform, safe view. Holy moly. I mean, that's from the head of OpenBSD, which, you know, is responsible for some of the most critical security software that the entire web is reliant on. And this is, you know, his viewpoint. So when it comes to security, we got to listen to Theo de Raadt at least a little bit, you know?
Yep.
Now, I would love your thoughts on this, in part because I would love someone else's thoughts on this, because I kind of agree with everything Theo just said, but I'm kind of a hardliner on some of these things. So when you look at this, as a company that ships computers with microprocessors, shipping from Intel Microprocessor
Yes, microprocessors, guilty as charged. We put them in our machines.
They're my neighbors here. They're literally right next door to me.
Yeah.
Well, not literally, but almost right next door.
Are you in Beaverton?
Yeah. I'm actually just down the street from Intel's main HQ here. Yeah, it's right there.
Oh my goodness!
I could walk over there in 5 minutes.
Yeah, why don't you ask them? Go just stand outside, Michael Moore style, and just say,
I have asked, man, but this is not something they want to go on the record for. They really don't want to go on the record with me about this. This is not going to go well. Their best bet here is to go quiet on this, and that's what they've kind of done. But for someone who ships laptops with Intel chipsets, what do you feel about this? When you look at like how Dell needs to respond, how Intel needs to respond, how the Linux developers need to respond, what are your thoughts? What's your gut tell you, man?
See, I knew you were going to ask me this. What am I going to say? I can't say anything about it. The one thing in my
hold on. Barton was a pansy again on the show today.
Exactly,
Lol.
Pansy or astute. One thing though is
there's a gray line there.
So here's something that's sort of somewhat related. My non-ability to answer is this. Getting back to the Sputnik program, because that's the answer. What was the question? The fact is that I have never been within the client group, right? So obviously I work with people in the client group. So you would be surprised how little I know about the overall client business, right? So I've been in the CTO office, I've been in marketing, I've been in professional services.
Yeah.
And so I know enough to get Sputnik to drive Sputnik, but I don't really know any more about that than
you're not negotiating the deals between Intel and Dell for the chipsets in the machines. I got you.
I haven't done that in the last 2 weeks. So I wasn't supposed to say that. No, they don't let me anywhere. They don't let me anywhere near that stuff.
That's
so
probably smart. Yeah. No, yeah. I get you. It's fair. It's
so
fair.
But now it's not just Intel, right? It's a whole swath of others.
This is what Intel So this is what Theo's really getting at here. Theo de Raadt is really saying, let me bring this slide up. Intel has been exceedingly clever to mix Meltdown, speculative loads, with a separate issue, Spectre. So I mean, Meltdown and Spectre are really two separate classes of vulnerabilities. One hits Intel and hits Intel hard and doesn't really impact AMD and others quite so much. And there's a separate issue, and that is Spectre, that that can be that is kind of being kind of mushed together all in one, as far as at least the media is concerned. And Spectre impacts a whole host, impacts a bunch of different CPUs, right? Tons of them, AMD included, at least in various ways. And Intel has been very, whenever they talk about it, they squish the two together. And that's what's driving Theo crazy. Basically, clearly, I mean, these quotes were from the mouths of a very pissed off Theo de Raadt. And so that's kind of the thing. So, but Meltdown is really, is really Intel's thing. In fact, let me see if I even have this here. Oh yes, there's a line of code in the Linux kernel. I don't know if you've seen this, but I put it on a t-shirt, and it basically is it's 2 lines of C code submitted by AMD that literally is a check to see if the x86 vendor is AMD. And if so, and if it's not AMD, then go ahead and flag the CPU as insecure and do all those crazy slowdown workarounds for Meltdown, which I thought was the most epic burn of all time, from a line of code in the Linux kernel anyway. I mean, you know, how often do you get to do that? So I put it on a t-shirt, but it's not just Intel that's impacted by these class of vulnerabilities, but the biggest vulnerability, the one that really hit the hardest and the one that's unique to Intel, is Meltdown. And yeah.
My seemingly naive question, obviously I knew all the answers. I was able to pull it out of you to provide a better explanation for your listeners. See, and that's all I was doing there. Yes,
Barton George.
Next thing we needed a Venn diagram, and I'd put that on a shirt saying problems, issues, obfuscation, delineation, retribution, everything else.
What's the? You watch Silicon Valley at all?
I watched it, and I'm sure, like a lot of people said, it's just too painful. It's just too close to home to not be painful. It is
super painful to watch in some episodes just because of that. But yeah, no, never mind that. I was gonna make a point about the twin triangles, but people will just know what I'm talking about.
I'll pretend like I do too.
Barton, you released a laptop today. You know who else releases laptops and puts Linux on them? System 76 does.
I know those guys. In fact, weren't we on a show together?
You did. I want to say this. I want to say this flat out, and because I think this is really cool. So System 76 and Dell both release laptops, both ship them with Linux. System 76, that's all they do. Dell, it's Sputnik and you that do that with Intel.
That's all I do.
That's all you do. But you guys came on the show. This was a year ago, a little more than a year ago. I don't remember when we had the two of you on, but it was you and Carl, the CEO of System 76, 2 great guys, came on the show to talk about the general business. For all intents and purposes, you guys are competitors. And what I just love is I love seeing you and System 76 and Pogo and every other manufacturer out there that's shipping Linux all succeeding. I'm seeing. It seems like everyone's ships are raising with the water right now, and I love that. Like it makes me so happy. I mean, it's great. Like right now on screen, there's your little head, and right above your head is a giant System 76 banner. It's right there, and it's beautiful. Yeah, exactly. And it's glorious to see all that success within the Linux powered hardware space. But in respect out of having you on, instead of putting on like the Galago Pro from System 76, which is a totally righteous laptop, I'm putting on a small form desktop, their Meerkat. Because I figure it's different than what you sell, man. So these little guys, I absolutely love them. So they're tiny little 4-inch by 4-inch squares, super tiny, super massive, crazy quiet, ship with Linux, and man, they make the best little media centers. And this is what I think I'm going to do. I'm going to replace my Raspberry Pi with one of these because I've got Raspberry Pis as my media center right now because I'm a nerd and that's what we do. Do you have a media center PC, Barton?
No, not yet.
What do you mean not yet?
Christmas happened and I could have put it on the list.
Yeah, put it on the list. Well, I'll tell you what, Barton. If you do decide that you need a media center PC to play those video files, to play Steam games on your TV or whatnot, because I know you're into the gaming.
Pong, Atari, Pac-Man.
It's funny. Honestly, almost all the games I'm playing are old emulated stuff from like the early 1980s.
See,
so I don't
there you
technically need the beefiest machine, but having it really, really helps. Dude, System 76 Meerkat, just like the one that's sitting right next to your head right now. Fantastic way to go. A fantastic supporter of this show. Get them over at system76.com. They ship all with Linux because that's what they do. Also, Lulzbot. See that back there, Barton? That's a Lulzbot Mini. I love that thing so very, very much. I play with it so much. It's way, way too much. That is very cool. Kind of a problem. Luckily, I managed to con the Lulzbot people into sponsoring the show. Not so much because I need that sweet, sweet Lulzbot money, but mostly because I needed a way to get cheap filament so that I could print more things. So I conned them into sending me more filament so I could 3D print more things. And they just came out with a new tool head called the Lulzbot Aerostruder, which can do both flexible print filaments, so like kind of more of the rubbery type stuff, as well as the harder stuff like the PLA, all from a single tool head, which for a 3D printer is kind of righteous. You can find out more over at lulzbot.com. Here's that t-shirt I was talking about. It's beautiful. Also, I have a Linux Sucks shirt. Barton, next time we meet in person, I'll have a Linux Sucks shirt for you. That way you can.
Hey, and I got one of these for you, right? The Sputnik 5th anniversary T-shirts.
Hey,
that's a limited edition.
Ooh, a limited print.
Well, not really, but I'll say that just so that you feel better about getting one. In fact, my space heater's like going crazy, so I'm gonna de-hoodie for a second and. There we go.
I didn't even hear it. Before we head off into the sunset, and I get a final thought from my buddy Barton here. I want to thank all of my Patreon supporters that helped to make this show possible. I get to do this full time and talk to ridiculously attractive people like Barton here.
Stop it some more. Flattery will get you everywhere.
These folks right here up on the screen, Barton, you can't see it right now, but they're awesome. These are all a bunch of the people that are the top level supporters of the show. There's over 500 some odd supporters right now. More is always better. But man, you guys are all absolutely fantastic. You make this possible. Here's the show schedule. Tomorrow is the tech news. After that is Linux Thursday. It's going to be absolutely delightful. If you want to pick up some of those shirts and support the show along the way, go over to lunduke.com. You can subscribe over to me over on youtube.com/BrianLunduke, patreon.com/BrianLunduke. Also, starting yesterday, as of yesterday, this show is a publicly available audio podcast as well. So we're not just a video show anymore. If you would like the links for that, go to lunduke.com. On any of the show posts, there's a nice little RSS feed there. And as of, I believe, later this afternoon, you'll be able to pick this up over on Google Play and their little podcast music-y dooey. I don't know about iTunes because they've been giving me a hard time lately. I'm trying to get it. I don't have a Windows machine. I don't have one. I don't have a Mac.
Wow.
I don't have one. And so I don't have a way to run iTunes, right? I don't have that.
Yep.
And part of the procedure
who runs iTunes these days?
I don't know. Huh? I don't know. But you have to run iTunes, I think, at least once to authorize your account in a particular way in order to submit a podcast. I can't do that. I tried to run iTunes under Wine. No go. At least with the old version of Wine. Maybe I'll try it with Wine 3. But holy moly, it's a pain. I've gone round and round with Apple's tech support email, and they just simply don't understand. Like I was telling them, I explained the problem to them. And I'm like, can you guys submit it for me or something? They're like, no, we can't do that. I'm like, oh, okay, great. How do you authorize my account if I can't run iTunes? And they're like, well, just install iTunes. And I'm like, you don't understand. I don't have an operating system I can install it on. It's not something I can actually do. They're like, well, then just go install iTunes. Literally, after I spent like a paragraph explaining to them, I cannot install iTunes. It's not physically possible. It's not that I don't want to, which I don't want to. But
First
I cannot do it.
step: wipe your machine, install Mac OS.
Make a
Then what's the
Hackintosh.
problem? Yeah, what's the problem?
So they responded to me with my paragraph rant explaining how it is impossible for me to do this. With their response, a link to download the iTunes setup exe.
I tell you,
That's it. So,
customer service.
Jesus, mother of mercy.
I'm not gonna. Not that I'm casting. Yes, go ahead.
Yes, I just had to vent. So if you use iTunes, you might be able to one day get this podcast on iTunes. Who knows if that'll actually happen? Friggin'
I hear Microsoft hearts iTunes.
they heart everything.
They do.
Barton, as we head off into the sunset here today,
yes,
if you could explain our time together to a complete stranger who has no idea who we are or what we do in one word and one word only, what would that word be?
Fantabulosity?
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, you nailed it. Really right on the button.
Yeah,
thank you, Barton George from Dell.
The pleasure
for
is
allowing
mine
me
as always, Mr. Lunduke.
to talk about some of your competitors with their logo above your head.
Yeah. It's all good. It's all
You're a
good.
good sport, buddy.